For the last 5 years, my son Derek had affectionately dubbed me the Buzzkill. The bitter irony of that title was that I was the one footing the bill for every single event I supposedly ruined. It all started to fall apart at my grandson's 7th birthday party. It was a sweltering Saturday, and the backyard venue I'd rented was packed with screaming kids, Pinterest-perfect tablescapes, and ridiculously overpriced catering. I had covered it all: the deposit, the food, the decorations, and the massive custom cake. Halfway through the afternoon, my daughter-in-law Kelsey marched over with a scowl on her face. She wanted to hire a last-minute group of party entertainers that was going to cost about $600, basically what I spend on groceries in a month. I looked her dead in the eye, and keeping my voice level, told her no. I explained that we were already way over budget, and the kids were perfectly happy playing on their own. Kelsey crossed her arms and immediately scanned the yard for Derek. My son trudged over, listened to his wife complain, and let out a heavy sigh, rubbing his temples like I was the biggest burden in the world. Right in front of half a dozen guests, he looked at me with pure disappointment. "You're always such a buzzkill, Mom," he muttered, making sure the neighbors could hear him. "You can never just let us be happy." I didn't argue. I didn't cry or make a scene. I just stared down at my half-eaten food. For the very first time, I saw the situation with crystal clarity. I wasn't a mother to them. I was an ATM. And the second the ATM stopped dispensing cash, I became the enemy. There were no dramatic goodbyes. I grabbed my purse, kissed my grandson on the forehead, and quietly slipped out early. That night, sitting in the deafening silence of my house, I didn't feel heartbroken. I just felt bone-tired. I opened my laptop and sat down at the dining room table. It was time to stop ruining their lives. The next morning, I poured myself a mug of black coffee and opened my laptop again. For years, I had let my credit card stay linked to a bunch of Derek and Kelsey's accounts. The weekly grocery delivery app, Kelsey's car insurance, and a handful of streaming services they had forgotten to switch over to their own cards. With a few clicks, I deleted my card from every single platform. I didn't cancel the accounts entirely. I just removed the shared payment method. It was a quiet move, no warnings, no grand speeches. I knew it wouldn't take long for them to notice. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Derek, and he sounded incredibly flustered and annoyed. "Mom, the grocery app declined your card. You need to update your info right now. The delivery guy just left the order sitting there half-finished." I took a sip of my coffee, staring out the window into my backyard. "Oh, right," I replied breezily. "I'm restructuring my finances. From now on, you guys will have to use your own cards for your expenses." There was a heavy, loaded silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing hard. "Are you serious right now?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Are you punishing us over the party entertainer thing? That is so childish." "It's not a punishment, Derek. It's just a change in how I manage my money. Have a great day." I hung up before he could argue. I didn't put my phone on airplane mode, but I also didn't expect him to call right back. I knew his playbook. He and Kelsey always used the silent treatment as a weapon. They figured if they froze me out long enough, the guilt would eat me alive and I'd come crawling back with an apology. What they didn't realize was that this time, the silence was exactly what I needed. 3 weeks went by without a single call, text, or visit. To them, it was a boycott. To me, it was the most peaceful 3 weeks I'd had in a decade. I tended to my garden, caught up on my reading, and grabbed lunch with my old friend Helen. Without the constant, exhausting pressure of bailing Derek out of financial tight spots or keeping up with Kelsey's endless aesthetic demands, my mind totally cleared. But that same clarity made me notice something about my own house. The guest room and half of my garage were absolutely stuffed with boxes, old furniture, and expensive sporting gear that Derek had bought and quickly abandoned. They were treating my home like a free public storage unit. One afternoon, while sweeping the patio, I checked a voice memo Kelsey had sent me by mistake. She had clearly meant to send it to Derek's sister. It was only a few seconds long, but the message was loud and clear. Just let her throw her little tantrum. You know how she is. Give her a month and she'll be begging to see us, and she'll pay for the summer lake house to make up for it. Just ice her out. I deleted the message without replying. I wasn't even mad. I just felt a cold, hard sense of determination. If I was nothing more than a resource they could bleed dry and then ignore, it was time to shut off the faucet completely. I walked out to the garage and flipped on the overhead light. I looked at Derek's paddleboards, Kelsey's bins of out-of-season clothes, and the bulky furniture that didn't fit in their townhouse. I wasn't going to ask them to move their stuff because that would open the door to a negotiation I wasn't willing to have. Instead, I grabbed my phone and Googled a local moving and storage company. It was time to clean house. I hired 2 local college guys, paying them a premium for their time and discretion. On a random Tuesday morning, they totally cleared out the guest room and the garage. Every last box side table and discarded hobby of my son's was loaded into a box truck. I had rented a climate-controlled storage unit a few miles across town. I paid for exactly 1 month up front. Once everything was securely locked away, I dropped the padlock key into a padded envelope and scribbled a brief note on a piece of stationery. Your belongings are safely stored at this address. The first month is paid in full. After the 15th of next month, the bill and the items are entirely your responsibility. I sent it via certified mail so I'd have proof they actually received it. The next day, right at 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Kelsey. This time I didn't let it ring. I answered immediately. "How dare you touch our stuff?" she shrieked, her voice shaking with rage. "My good winter coats were in there." "My garage isn't a public storage unit, Kelsey," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "I needed the space. Your things are in a proper facility now. You are out of your mind if you think we're paying for that unit. That's completely up to you. You have 30 days to figure it out." I ended the call and temporarily blocked her number. I knew they were going to escalate things. When people who are used to controlling you suddenly lose their grip, their first instinct is to lash out. I was certain Kelsey's next move would be pulling out her heaviest artillery to force me back into my role as the submissive doormat grandmother. But I was ready. On Friday morning, exactly as I suspected, an SUV slammed on the brakes in front of my house. I watched from the kitchen window. Kelsey threw the car in park, dragged my 2 grandkids out of the back seat, and marched up my walkway. She laid on the doorbell, ringing it 3 or 4 times in a row. I opened the door slowly. Kelsey didn't even say hello. She just practically shoved the kids into the entryway. "We have a massive work emergency," she announced, refusing to make eye contact. "There's no one else to watch them. I'll be back at 6. She spun around and power walked back to her car before I could even get a word out. She figured that by backing me into a corner, I'd default to my usual role as the unconditional live-in help. I adored my grandchildren. They weren't to blame for their parents' toxic behavior. I actually had a wonderful day with them. We baked chocolate chip cookies colored and watched movies on the couch. Right at 6 p.m., Kelsey pulled up. She clearly expected to find me totally exhausted, maybe even willing to apologize just to smooth things over. Instead, she found me sitting comfortably on the porch, flipping through a magazine with the kids fully dressed, hair-brushed backpacks on, and ready to go. "I love spending time with them," I told her softly but firmly as I handed over their bags. "But this is the last time you use them as pawns. If you ever dump them on my porch again without asking, first, I will not open the door." Kelsey let out a dry, disbelieving laugh. "They're your grandkids. It's your job to help us out. My only job in this life is taking care of myself." Have a good evening, Kelsey. I shut the front door before she could snap back. As I listened to her SUV speed off, I walked over to the front door and tested the deadbolt. Earlier that afternoon, I'd had a locksmith out to rekey the exterior gates and the front door. If they tried to ambush me again, they wouldn't even make it past the driveway. Summer was creeping up, which was the season my family always looked forward to the most. For the past decade, it had been a rock-solid tradition that I would rent a massive, multi-level house down by the lake, so we could all spend 2 weeks together. I covered the rental, the groceries, and all the dinners out. In early June, Derek texted me. He was acting like nothing had happened over the last few months, like the storage unit and the babysitting ambush were just a weird fever dream. Hey, Mom, did you lock in the dates for the lake house? Yet Kelsey wants the one with the heated pool this year. We already requested the PTO at work. I read the text while making my toast. I didn't feel that familiar, suffocating tightness in my chest, that old, desperate anxiety to keep them happy at all costs. I typed out my reply with absolute zen. I didn't rent a lake house this year. Hope you guys have a great vacation. It didn't even take 10 seconds for my phone to start ringing off the hook. This time, I picked up. What are you talking about? Derek demanded, sounding genuinely panicked. We already told the kids we were going to the lake. You can't do this to us right now. We don't have the cash to book something ourselves. Then you'll have to look for a more affordable option, I replied smoothly. I'm staying local this summer. You are completely ruining our vacation. You're ruining my life again, Mom. There it was, the exact phrase he always used to keep me in line. You're adults, Derek. My bank account isn't your emergency fund or your travel agency. You have plenty of time to plan something within your own budget. I hung up. That afternoon, I sat in my living room and just looked around. The 4-bedroom house suddenly felt massive, hollow, and bogged down by memories of people who only valued me for the lifestyle I could fund for them. Right then and there, I made the biggest decision of my life. Sunday morning, I heard the rattle of metal out front. I peeked through the blinds and saw Derek and Kelsey furiously trying to jam their old keys into the front gate. When they realized the locks wouldn't turn, Derek smacked the wrought iron in frustration. I stepped out onto the porch holding my mug of tea and just watched them. You changed the locks, my son yelled, his face flushed red. I did. Come on in, I said, hitting the remote button that popped the electronic gate. They stomped up the walkway and plopped down on the patio furniture without waiting for an invitation. I didn't offer to let them inside the house. Kelsey spoke first, sliding right into her comfortable role as the victim. You are being incredibly cruel, Diane, she scolded. You're tearing this family apart over a whim. First the groceries, then our stuff, and now the summer trip. You're punishing us. I shook my head, keeping my posture completely relaxed. This isn't a punishment, Kelsey. Punishing you would imply that I'm trying to teach you a lesson so you'll change. I don't care if you change. I simply decided I'm done funding your lifestyle. Derek leaned forward, going straight for the guilt trip. Mom, we're your blood. If you keep up this selfish phase, you're going to end up completely alone. You won't see the kids. You need us way more than you think. I stared at my son. I expected him to say something exactly like that, but hearing it out loud just confirmed everything I needed to know. There was absolutely no love in his words, just a conditional transactional threat. I understand, I said, standing up from my chair. The gate is open. Make sure it clicks shut behind you. I left them sitting out on the patio and went back inside. That very afternoon, I made the phone call that changed my life. I called a real estate agent who had sold Helen's place a few years back. I gave it to him straight. I had a 4-bedroom house in a highly sought-after suburban school district completely paid off, and I wanted to sell it fast and quietly. No for sale sign in the front yard. No open houses. Just extreme discretion. The agent was a pro. In under 2 weeks, he quietly brought by a few pre-vetted buyers, while Derek and Kelsey were giving me their second round of the silent treatment, thoroughly convinced that threatening my relationship with my grandkids would cause me to cave. A young childless couple with pre-approved financing fell in love with the big backyard and the oversized garage. They made an incredible offer right near asking price. I accepted it on the spot. For the next 30 days, my life was a covert operation. I packed up the sentimental things I actually cared about, donated the bulky furniture, and shredded decades of useless paperwork. I signed the closing documents on a Tuesday morning with the same casual energy it takes to buy a cup of coffee. With the cash from the sale, I bought a gorgeous modern 2-bedroom condo outright in a quiet coastal town 3 hours away. It was bright secure and had a balcony overlooking the water. Every last dime of the leftover money went straight into an index fund in my name. On moving day, I left the keys to the big house on the kitchen counter for the new owners. As the moving truck pulled away from the street I'd lived on for 30 years, I didn't feel an ounce of sadness. I felt like I could finally breathe. I still hadn't breathed a word of this to my son or daughter-in-law. I wanted them to find out on their own. I had been settled into my new condo for 3 days. I was totally unpacked, had bought some potted plants for the balcony, and even found a great little bakery on the boardwalk that sold incredible pastries. Friday afternoon rolled around and I decided it was time for a life update. I didn't text them directly. I just opened Facebook knowing full well Kelsey religiously monitored my page and posted a photo of the ocean view from my new balcony. The caption was simple: "Loving my new home on the coast. Here's to a fresh start." I knew that on Friday evenings, Derek usually took a shortcut past my old house to avoid the rush hour traffic on the main drag. I knew he was going to see an unfamiliar car in the driveway and different toys scattered in the yard. The first text came through at exactly 6:01 p.m. The second one came 30 seconds later. By 6:05 p.m., my phone was vibrating so hard it was vibrating off the glass coffee table. Did you sell the house? What did you do with the cash? That was our inheritance. You ruined us. For years, Derek had sworn up and down that I was ruining his life. Now, cut off from my bank account, my free labor, and my endless second chances, I had actually ruined the sweet deal they had going. And right on cue, they both suddenly remembered how to use their phones. The screen just kept lighting up. Missed calls from Derek. Frantic voicemails from Kelsey. I poured myself a heavy pour of red wine. I leaned against the balcony railing, feeling the salty ocean breeze on my face, and just let it ring. And ring. I felt zero obligation to explain a thing. The reality was crystal clear. The ATM was permanently out of order, and I had finally woken up. The next few weeks were a chaotic blur of desperate attempts from my son. Through Helen, I heard that Derek and Kelsey had actually knocked on my old door, demanding answers from the new owners, who had to politely threaten to call the police to get them to leave. Eventually, when they realized bullying wasn't going to work, they pivoted their strategy. Derek sent me a massive, emotionally loaded text saying how much they missed me and how the kids were asking about me. He casually threw in that they had hit a bit of a rough patch financially because they'd had to pay for their own summer vacation and they just needed a small temporary loan to make rent. I texted back the next morning. No drama, no long-winded lectures. So glad to hear the kids are doing well. I don't have any money to lend you. Wishing you guys the best in figuring it out. I never heard back after that. They finally realized the door they'd kicked so many times was bolted shut for good. Some people think a happy ending means the whole family is sitting around a dinner table together, no matter the emotional toll it takes to get there. I learned the hard way that true peace comes from knowing who loves you for you, and who only loves you for what you can do for them. These days, I spend my mornings walking the shoreline. Helen drives down to visit twice a month, and we drink wine and play cards on the balcony. At 65 years old, I feel lighter than I ever have. I didn't lose my family. I just retired from a brutal job I never applied for in the first place. I'm no longer the buzzkill. Now I own my own time. And honestly, that's worth way more than any house. Sometimes we spend the best years of our lives confusing unconditional love with a duty to constantly bail other people out. We think that being hyper-available and endlessly generous is the only way to hold a family together right up until we realize we're completely empty inside. If there's anything to take away from this, it's that setting boundaries isn't selfish, and it certainly isn't an act of revenge. It's just emotional survival. Learning to say no doesn't make you a bad person. It just reclaims your humanity so you stop being treated like an unlimited resource. At the end of the day, your peace of mind and self-respect are non-negotiable. And it is never, ever too late to choose your own peace over someone else's convenience.